recording. All right, so you should see my hands and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
So so what you do is you go to your profile in the upper right hand corner, and then you can just enter a code and just type in that code. So it's what, WPMB 9AX0, and then just hit submit. So the first place I'm kind of taking you to is my oh, that's funny. My like tutor space, where I teach students everywhere from.
1 second.
Sure.
I want to join.
Yeah.
Show me
Yeah.
again where should I enter this code.
Yeah. So in your watch,
Please
go
for a second.
to.
Yes.
So you know how to open
Now.
your watch, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. You go to your profile up in the upper left-hand
Yes.
corner, and then you can enter the code,
Okay. Now I see.
and
Great.
that's where you put the code. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll be there in a few minutes.
Yep. Hopefully it brings us to the same room. I don't know for sure how these meetup codes work. I thought they always brought you to the same subroom, but it looks like it brings you to different subrooms. Rec Room has some pretty interesting designs for like how they lay out rooms and such. But if that doesn't work, I can just send you a friend request, and then we can just do it from there. I was doing in the meetup code because I wasn't sure how many people were going to be trying to join. There you are. Fantastic.
Great.
Hello.
Great.
And we are already in a party. Perfect. So this is like one of the first little tutor rooms that I put together, where I teach students everywhere from third grade all the way up to like seniors in college. So it's a broad spectrum of learning abilities and such. But the thing that is really powerful in Rec Room is that I have tools like this maker pen that allow me to kind of dynamically create things that I need for a lesson. So in this lesson, we were going over how to add improper fractions. So we had like 7/2 times, or rather not add, but multiply improper fractions. And I created a set of tools here for like, you can like press these buttons here, and I can actually edit these fractions for the student to like play around with, right? So this is how I have this nice big thing, and then the student can come over here and then enter their answer in using these buttons, and it's all through like the watch. You can actually tap one of these buttons to see what that experience is like. Yeah. So you get a notification on your watch, and then you can just type in your answer. And the reason I'm doing it this way, so the reason I'm doing it this way as opposed to having them write on the board is because writing on the boards in Rec Room takes a lot of practice, and for a third grader, it can be pretty difficult to like write down an answer. So having like these little tools here for them to, enter in numbers is a little bit better for their experience. But then I can come into the board and
your students are in VR?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Most of them are. Some of them I do just stream to. So I have one physics student that I just stream to. But the advantages of VR and specifically Rec Room will become apparent once I bring you to the physics room that I have.
So let me quickly give a quick summary to those who watched our previous recording about VR chat. That this is also social VR, meaning that we have accounts names on top of us. So Joker joining us.
Hello.
Hi. So in this world, in this social network, we look all alike, like sort of this cartoonish characters.
Yeah, with no legs or arms.
And yes, with no legs and arms. Just like in VR chat, there are many worlds, and you can have many instances of the same world.
Yep.
And this particular world is your world that you created.
Yes. Yeah. Or modified. It was a template that I modified so that I could teach in it.
Yeah, of course. Great. So let me.
And there's actually
I need
flying.
to get off the chair.
Yeah. So you can see how tricky it is to write. So that's why, in general, for people who are new to VR, I try to come up with ways that avoids them having to struggle with writing. I have no problem with it. I can do everything just fine. You'll see. But yeah, the other advantages are like, okay, we've got these blocks here that, when I'm trying to explain things, I often like try to find different ways that the student might want to visualize things. And, this is just one of those things that I try is like, okay, if we have, if we have 6 blocks, right, what's a third of those? Well, we take, these 2 blocks, that would be effectively 1/3 of, your total number of blocks and so on. So this is like a really basic explanation of kind of some of the tools we use. I've also got some other tools such as like these like rays here that allow, and line segments, though the line segments seem to be a little broken in this room. So that would be like a line. You've got rays that have like a starting point and just go off to infinity in one direction. And then you've got line segments that start and end. I don't know where the ball went there, but that's okay. I haven't used this particular room in a little while. This is where the meetup decided to bring us, but yeah. There's not much here, but I want to bring you to the next room that I use. So we will go over to the park. To show off some other stuff. I'll make sure I'm going to mute myself in game so that you're not hearing me double. Sorry about that. Okay, so this area has a lot more space to it. And in this area, I've taught everything from programming, actually, to like area and volume. Let's get Joker in here. There we go. Welcome. So I want to show you briefly how you can fly, because there's a bit of distance. If you hold your hand straight up.
Yeah, now I can hear everyone. Great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you hold your hand straight up like this, you can hold the jump button, and then you'll be able to start flying.
I think I cannot hear you.
Oh. Sorry, I muted myself in game because I thought you were hearing me in Discord as well. Okay, there we go. All right.
No, I muted Discord, so I can hear
got
you
it.
only through...
Got it. Okay, so we got that sorted out. Okay, so if you hold your hand straight up like this and then hold the jump button, you'll see a little progress meter fill up, and then once it's full, you can actually start flying. Yeah? And then you just press the jump button to start moving around quickly. Yeah. So down here, I've used this area to kind of teach, yeah. That takes a little bit of getting used to, but everybody kind of picks up on the flying pretty quickly. Hello, Joker. Yeah. So down here, yeah. Down here we've got, yeah. Sorry for like throwing you in head first with all of this. I'm like, yeah. I'm not sure what the skill level is, but so I have a bunch of measuring tools that I've used with the students, and this is for teaching both decimals and calculating areas and volumes and such. And what's great is that I can kind of come up with problems on the spot using the creation tools. So for instance, I can just like I can make, some area that I want them to measure quite quickly. And then, this might be like a floor plan or something. And they can start taking the tools that I've built here and start measuring out the different dimensions of this shape here. And things that they got to learn, things that they need to learn is like, okay, we need to figure out, for instance, how do we break this shape up so that we can add all the areas together and so on, right? And so
Great.
this is like super powerful for them. And then, I can extend it to other shapes. Like we have wedges and such. So it's like this one can grab this and start drawing out a triangle. And I'm like, okay, let's find the area of this triangle. And we try to figure it out. And very quickly I can start like demonstrating, hey, how do we find the area of a triangle? Well, we can do something like, for a right triangle here, we can clone this. Let's see. Yeah, we can clone it and then, fit the two pieces together to make, a full rectangle. And now you can see how, like, the area is double, therefore the area of a triangle is half of its rectangular counterpart, right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
But I cannot grab them.
Yes, I could make them grabbable, actually. So now they are. Let me grab one. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so it becomes like a really fun, like, little play space here where we can, like, build and play around with things. And this is, I've had, like, algebra students where, like, if you've ever had like weird problems whereby like they try to combine complex shapes together, for instance, like a snow cone or something, right? It's sometimes hard for them to visualize exactly what shapes they should extract. And so we work on that. I like literally show them how to use the maker pen. We actually build a snow cone using, a cone and a hemisphere. And then they can directly see, oh, all right, so the area or the volume of a snow cone then is, the volume of this hemisphere plus the volume of this cone. So once they like build it, they can start to see how the components come together.
Great.
Yeah. So that's like one of the great things with Rec Room is like being able to kind of dynamically build these props, these like learning props in real time, so that build these props in real time as the student needs them, and as the problems kind of come up. There's another one that maybe I should merge together and make grabbable. There we go. Yeah, so then they can pick it up, they can analyze it. It's a really, really powerful tool for teaching. Just anything, right? Because you don't have to do things on the whiteboard anymore. There's no more like, you don't have to come up to the whiteboard and be like, all right, let's draw a snow cone on this whiteboard, and be like, all right, well, we got a hemisphere and then you got a cone, and then the student has to spend like all this extra effort like visualizing what this looks like in 3D when we already have this, This is it. Okay. They don't have to spend any extra effort visualizing it in 3D. They have it in 3D. Now they can focus on how do you find the volume of this thing,
Great. So, I think there's still value in all of it if someone experiences from two-dimensional screen.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And you'll see that in the next subroom I'll bring you to, actually. For my physics student, I've had two different physics students. One's just doing like electrostatics and magnetism, but we started with like kinematics. And then we're now in electrostatics and magnetism. And then I also had another student who was doing fluid mechanics. So, and in both of those scenarios, you've got like these very three-dimensional concepts that are hard to visualize on the board. So I think let's hop to the next subroom where I actually do the physics. And that one's a lot more built out because I do a lot of lessons with physics students. But I wanted to show off just like the basic stuff first, just because this is like, these are kind of the benefits of VR for even like young children too. You can see the work on the board here actually is us trying to find the area of their house. They gave us like some dimensions and stuff, and like then we went through and built it in Rec Room using kind of some of the tools here. All right, let's see. Some rooms. We'll head over to kinematics, which is now an everything room. All right, they should have the invite soon. So this room's a little messy. Where did they go? Yeah, so this room is a little messy because I spend a lot of lessons in here building lots of different props and stuff. And I actually just finished a lesson today. So it's got a lot of stuff going on, kind of demonstrating some of the things. I built these...
I think Joker got lost because...
Oh, I can invite him.
Initially, I think you invited us to a different place.
Oop, let me see.
I don't
Joker.
know what happened, but I was in a different room and then I appeared here.
Why is he... Invite. There we go. And I'll invite him to my party as well. I sent him an invite, so...
Great.
But yeah, so the order of boards here actually is kind of... when I started with this particular student, they didn't even know like trigonometry, right? They're in college. They didn't know trigonometry yet. So we worked on... Are you able to fly in here? Let me see.
No, I cannot do this magic anymore.
Okay, let me... this magic. Let me see. Permission, game rules. Let me make it so everyone can fly. Yes, there we go. Should be able to fly now.
Yeah,
so
great.
This person didn't know yet even how to do trigonometry. So we had a lot to learn, but we built our learnings up through kind of demonstrations here in this room, and we got through kinematics, and now I get to keep kind of these equations around so that we can kind of reference them very easily for this student. And this student actually does not come into VR, but and let me actually show off how I stream, because that's actually another huge benefit for Rec Room is like I have, this streamer cam that I can easily position wherever I want. And that's just mine, so you can't grab it. But like I can aim this wherever I want, and then I also have in this room a set of streamer points that allow me to just pick cameras. Can you see this little like purple outline? I don't know if you can actually.
No.
Okay, so it's just local, but they can see it on the stream. So I have,
Okay.
and this will be in the recording as well. So actually, they can't see it on the stream because that's what they're looking at. Never mind. Nevertheless, there is I can pick a set of presets for myself, and you can see it in Discord, and just sort of hop between my different presets in the room. And you're seeing this on Discord, not here. Yeah. Yeah, so and then I can, bring this camera around and start like showing in 3D some of these like things. So one of the things that was really valuable for having 3D was when we got into rotational systems, and we were doing things like momentum and torques and stuff. Because as you may know, torque and angular momentum are like a very three-dimensional.
Yeah, I think you need to point the camera so everyone will see
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, let me switch back to POV so that I don't get confused.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. There we go. Okay. So one of the things that's like really challenging with teaching angular systems, angular momentum and torques and stuff is that you always have these three vectors that are at right angles, right? You always have, you've got the wheel is spinning, right? You've got your force on that wheel, we'll say your force on the wheel, right? Then you've got the torque on the wheel, which is what? Yeah, so it's going to be in this direction, right? So then you've got your torque on the wheel, and in a two-dimensional lecture or even in a real-world lecture, it's very hard to like explain where these vectors are. I've found even on YouTube, like when they bring out the bicycle wheel or something, it's not always obvious about what this is. And what's really powerful is that I can say like, hey, okay, say we apply, we've got our rotation, and we're going to apply a force on the wheel like this, right? So we apply a force like that. Well, where is our torque? Well, the torque is actually in this direction, right? So you get a torque that's actually in this direction because it's trying to rotate the wheel around this axis, right? Very unintuitive, very weird, but this is the torque vector, right? And then all I have to do is say, hey, okay, well, here we have our existing angular momentum vector, and here's our new torque vector. We can look at the equation and be like, oh, well, our angular momentum is just our torque times time, right? So if we apply this force or this torque for some amount of time, all we're doing is we're adding these vectors together. And what do we get? Well, we get a vector that looks like this. And so the wheel, the wheel's new angular momentum looks something like this, right? So those are kind of and then I can, of course, take the camera and like show them around and show them how, a force that does this actually rotates the wheel like this. They can see how the axis of rotation is actually just kind of rotating like this instead of doing the intuitive thing, right? These vectors are like invaluable for just showing off like how both vectors add and they're like and just like their representations and stuff, Very powerful stuff.
Great. Yeah.
And this just comes up over and over. So like oftentimes we'll go over practice problems. One of them was like, we've got a rotating asteroid, right? And there was like a spaceship trying to tug on it. And this was another angular momentum problem. But the student was having such a hard time like visualizing what was happening because everything was represented on the page as 2D. So I built an asteroid, right? A spherical asteroid, and then we put down with those same vectors. I started putting down all the forces and stuff, right? So now that we are into electrostatics, this continues to be a super cool learning tool because if we're talking about like Gauss's law, I can't pick that one up. But if we're talking about Gauss's law, I can build out positive and negative charges, put them inside, some representation of a volume and say, oh, we can look at the flux here. Another thing that I experimented with recently was like, hey, let's try representing voltage as actual hills, actual slopes, right? And this is something that you just cannot do in the real world very well, right? So this is actually representing a circuit. So we've got the circuit on the board here. And there's some power sources and some resistors. And the question is like, what is the voltage everywhere in the circuit? Or rather, what are the voltages across the circuit if you were to like start measuring? And so my premise here was I was trying to describe how voltage is like effectively just hills, right? Or voltage changes are just hills. It's changes in potential. And so what I was able to do is we were able to take some of the math that we did for this circuit and build it into an actual layout like this, whereby, oh, there's a voltage increase over here. When you get to this power source, well, you're actually going from positive to negative, so there's a voltage decrease, right? And then it's level here because there's no resistors, and then there's a voltage decrease across this resistor to get all the way down to the bottom of this power source, and then there's a voltage increase, right?
Beautiful.
And everything sort of comes together, and this kind of shows off also how Kirchhoff's rule works, how and how like how equipotential lines are like a thing. All of this stuff sort of comes out naturally once you're able to visualize voltage as this like three-dimensional shape here instead of just numbers on a flat board. And of course, I was doing this in real time with the Maker Pen. So like pulling out my Maker Pen, drawing out this thing, this was all happening in real time. We were doing it live. I was actually experimenting with this. I didn't know if it was going to turn out right. Like I wasn't sure how it was going to happen. And especially with things like, okay, when you're solving a real circuit, you kind of find all the individual voltage gaps, right? Or voltage drops. Then you got to kind of stick them together, right? So when I was building this initially, like not everything was lining up until we were able to lift things up and line things up like so, right? So that's
actually, it's beautiful that you can do it in real time.
Yep, exactly. Now that we're getting into magnetism, the 3D component of this is like getting more and more important, I'm finding. We're like it doesn't like another like just today I drew out this demonstration here. So we've got magnetic field lines, right? And we've got a coil of wire. And then let me grab my vectors real quick. So I was grabbing a bunch of vectors to demonstrate, okay, of course I grab a purple vector, which isn't very visible. So I grabbed a vector to represent the current in this coil. And then I grabbed another vector to represent the force that we were experiencing on this coil. And, this is where I would bring out my camera. I'd bring out my camera, and for the stream, I'll do it as well. I'd bring out my camera like this, and I'd start flying around kind of this shape so that the student can see exactly what's going on, right? And then I'd ask them, okay, so we've got current going in this direction. We've got magnetic field lines going in this direction. What direction is the force that it's feeling, right? And so, they do their right hand rule. Point your fingers in the direction of the current, curl your fingers in the direction of the magnetic field, and then your thumb points in the direction of the force, right?
It's funny that you can actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So this gesture comes in handy. Yeah, and so that's grabbable because as I'm going, I'm like, okay, so we found the torque, we found the force here. What if we rotate this thing a little bit, right? Well, the current's still going in the same direction. Which way is the force? Well, that hasn't changed either. So that means that this coil of wire is experiencing a torque up in this direction. And so we can actually, using some of the learnings from back there, and oftentimes I'll just drag the camera back over to those boards that we covered initially, because the student is like familiar with those boards. I saved the room with those boards, all those formulas. We get to just reference them and go back to them whenever we need. We can just say, all right, so here's the torque on this wheel, right? And then we can demonstrate how rotating this, what does that do to the forces involved, and so on and so forth. And then one of the fun things that I did was I showed how once this wheel gets to here, we can flip the magnetic field lines. Let's see. Yeah, we can take the magnetic field lines. Oop, why is it frozen? No, it's not frozen. Is it? Yes, there we go. And just like, flip them. And now we've got another problem, right? And so at this point, current's still going in the same direction, but now magnetic field lines are in the opposite direction. So our torque actually allows it to keep spinning. And now we have an electric motor, right? As long as we keep flipping the magnetic field lines, we can create this this thing. But what's really cool about this whole setup here is that, I am building this in real time, but oftentimes I'm doing it collaboratively with the student. Like I'm saying, okay, because this was all based on kind of a problem that they were looking at. I'm like they're telling me effectively what I should be drawing. It's like, all right, where do we have some magnetic field lines? How are those arranged, right? So we build those out and I clone them and do some stuff like this, right? And then maybe they get confused. Maybe they get confused about how the current, maybe they get confused about with the coil of wire, like how the magnetic field lines in a solenoid kind of build up. And so, you just draw like this 3-dimensional shape instead of trying to represent it on the board. So that's kind of my strategy here. There's like lots of like little things. I'm really eager to get a physics student in VR because right now both of my physics students have been just streaming, but they seem to really get a lot out of this. And the fact that this particular...
But why don't you invite them to use like a 2D version?
Like in screen mode?
iPad or something like that. Yes.
I have in the past. They're more or less. Actually, that's pretty that's pretty valid. They're more or less. So I know that one of my physics students doesn't have like the best PC, but Rec Room should be able to. They should be able to get into Rec Room. Maybe I'll bring that up next time.
Yeah, because I think like part of the reason to do something in VR is that you can be 100% sure that student is concentrated.
Yeah. Yep.
You cannot play on the phone. You cannot look in the window. Like you're really here. You cannot do anything else.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. That's definitely valid. I've had algebra students who are in VR, and that's kind of one of the big benefits is having them be able to like be very engaged, and so on. So
great.
And my strategy is, of course, like also, I have all these 3D demonstrations, and then we get to reel it back into the math world, right? And so
we change streaming back to your with your first person view.
I'm especially discombobulated because there's somebody in the room. Usually it's very obvious to me that I'm streaming, and so I keep forgetting that I'm live. But that's all right. So yeah, once we have all these like demonstrations, we can reel it back in and do some math with it, right? And what's great is like, a lot of these problems, I think this was one involving, it's very wonky. This was one involving a wire. So we had a current traveling, I think, down towards the ground. It was like this. And there was a compass located south, due south of the wire. And the question was, what was the direction that this compass would be pointing? And so this involved, again, a bunch of vectors. And we could just work through the problem by placing down the vectors of like, oh, here's the Earth's magnetic field. Here's the magnetic field. So here's the, here's the Earth's magnetic field on that compass. And then here is the magnetic field from the wire. I think that's the magnetic field from the wire. Yes. And so the resulting vector is just the one that you get when you add these together, right? And it all comes back to just adding vectors. But yeah, so this is this is kind of what I've been experimenting with. There's just so many like little things in this room. Like here's my little capacitors that I use for demonstrating how like adding capacitors in parallel compares to adding them in series, and just like how, when they're in parallel, the areas add, right? And when they're in series, the gaps add, and so on and so forth, right? So it's just like a lot of these little demonstrations. Here's like a little demonstration of Gauss's law. It's like, okay, student, where if I put this charge anywhere in this box, what is the flux coming out of the box, for instance, right? So it's like a huge there's just like a lot of like thinking that goes involved in like understanding Gauss's law, since it's inherently three-dimensional. You need an enclosing surface around a charge to get any value out of Gauss's law. So.
Great.
And then I do have one other demo over here, actually, to show off. This actually backtracks to when we were doing kinematics, and the student was just very confused. They were at this stage they were like confused about like vectors and stuff still. So what I have here are two vectors. One of them, the green one, is my acceleration vector, and the blue one is now my initial velocity vector, right? And kind of a side note, like, okay, cool, I can display in real time the magnitudes of these vectors and kind of the components of them. Yeah, and so you can have us play around with this, right? And then once the vectors are in place, you can press this button and start getting a simulation where it takes that initial velocity and like adds it into the acceleration. So we can do something like this, maybe make this a little shorter so it's more obvious. Yeah, so there we go. And you can start to demonstrate, this is how you get like a curved path with acceleration. And we can start playing around with this and like, here's what the gravity's vector looks like, right? So it goes up initially and then starts coming back down. Right? And so just lots of like cool ways to show off how vectors in kinematics really kind of work here. So
we don't see we're not seeing the programming nodes if you're meaning for us to.
No, you don't need to see the.
Or you just want to see the simulation. Right?
Yep, just the simulation. The program, yeah. So I do have a student who is also like, we're kind of playing around with the programming in Rec Room. So let's get that enabled in here, if I can.
Just to clarify, in VRChat, if you want to create a new world, you use like a separate software, Unity, to create a world, to put some models in, to create some logic inside the room. Here, you do everything within Rec Room, so you don't need another piece of software.
Exactly. And the great thing is, let's see, I'm going to turn on MakerPen for everyone, just because that seems to be the easiest way to do it. This room. Permissions, everyone can use MakerPen, yes. Okay, so in your watch, if you go to Home and then Backpack, you'll see the MakerPen. You can favorite it and then use it, and it will spawn in front of you. If you favorite it, you can actually pull it from behind your shoulder. But yeah, there it is. Yep. And then if you look at the top of the MakerPen, you'll see a little menu that pops up. And if you hit the little eyeball, yeah, so you're already creating. If you look at this like screen at the very top, there you go. There's a little eyeball in the upper right. Just toggle that on, and then you'll be able to see circuits.
Yeah, I see.
This is a bit of a mess. Let me clean it up here. Actually, this is a lot of a mess. Okay, so we've got our velocity vector. and we scale it by the time step. We also have our acceleration vector here, and we're scaling it by the time step and adding it to the velocity vector. So this is just like a very simple, this is like how in Rec Room you can kind of build these little simulations pretty easily. And what's kind of cool is that this is updating in real time. You know, I can make adjustments. Say we want to decrease the time step or something, I can like lower the frequency, and now we can start to demonstrate how like you get like numerical errors if you don't like simulate with a high enough resolution or something. I don't know. Or like slowing down time or something can do that as well in here. And it's all kind of dynamic. And I can take this, can save this as an invention and bring it to another room. So I can have this in my backpack at any time. We don't have to come here specifically. If we want to go to like the park and I want to start talking about this in the park, well, I'll just pull it out of my backpack and it's ready to go, right? And we can start playing around with it.
Usually people use all of this functionality to create sort of games.
Yep. And that's one thing that I do as well, because it's a lot of fun.
Theater.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything.
I'm using it here to teach, and it seems to be working really well. Like the fact that the student that I'm most proud of, he's gone from not understanding trigonometry at the beginning of this summer all the way to acing. In his last exam, he aced his, electrostatics exam. So like that is a huge improvement, and like I think a lot of that is owed to just being able to demonstrate these three-dimensional concepts in 3D instead of having to draw it on a whiteboard.
Yes, and essentially VR headsets, it's a cost of a textbook.
Yep. Yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, this is, I think,
Great,
this is a lot of my stuff. Yeah.
Yes, so it would be great to look also at a world that is very heavy with objects. Like just to see what is a capabilities of complexity you can build in the Rec Room.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have a good example of that?
Yes. Let's see what I can bring up. So we can go to like an art world, perhaps. One that some of my friends made. Yeah. All right, there we go. So this isn't exactly an educational experience. It's more of like an art experience, but this is all made with the in-game tools. Yeah, so this isn't exactly like an educational experience or anything. This is more of like everything that you see has been made with the in-game tools. Lots of like shapes, lots of like design here. And so we can actually hop down here and see like all of the detail in this room and so on. Come out here, you've got goats and stuff. This is actually a costume that you can put on. If you see the green button, you can equip it and look absolutely
great.
Stunning.
Great.
So one of the things that's a little different than VR Chat 2 is that you can link experiences together with subrooms. So we are in one room here, and you can easily have you can easily have like multiple subrooms in the same room, which are all kind of linked together. So you can create effectively a cohesive experience with unlimited amounts of space, effectively, right? So this room, maybe they spent all of their space building this windmill. Now we come down to this bus, and there's more experience. They want us to go further, right? But they don't have enough space to fill out the entire experience within this one room. So we come down to this bus, and I believe this actually brings us to another place. Yeah. So we can like hop on here. And I'm wondering, they didn't use seats in here. Joker's gonna miss his bus. Oh well. Yeah, supposedly we'll go on a little bit of a ride. Oh no!
No.
Yeah, so they use this bus as a way of like transitioning us to another subroom. There we go. Yeah, so here we are. So this is another instance, another subroom of the same room, which means that you can kind of link experiences together to kind of create something. If you're looking to make like a multi-part demonstration, maybe, or a multi-part lesson, you could do it like this. You could build out, the first part. Maybe you're, I don't know. Maybe you're talking about like fluid dynamics, like pressure and stuff. So you build out like, the very basics of what pressure is, and then in the next room you build out a dam or something, and you show like, oh, this is how we convert this pressure into energy, and how pressure is, your pressure is effectively the same as stored energy, right? And we can represent that as this MGH thing, which then turns into like your fluid head, for instance, right? Or your head pressure or something. So, but yeah, this is kind of some of this. Wow, there's a lot going on in here. I haven't actually like been able like visited this room in its entirety yet, so you're seeing me kind of see it live. They've created all these characters from scratch. It's all these umbrellas. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, so are there any limits at which point the scene will become too heavy?
Yeah, so we don't have our maker pens in here, that's right. So Rec Room uses a heuristic for like performance costs. They call it ink.
Yeah.
With ink, it basically every shape that you place down costs a certain amount of ink, and the room has a certain threshold of what that is. There's lots of different ways that you can optimize. Like you can make things that have no colliders on them. So I think a bunch of areas here have. So this has a lot of stuff does not perhaps have colliders. I'm not sure. Like yeah, like this tree. This tree doesn't have colliders, so it's a little bit cheaper for performance reasons and so on. So you come in here, you can build things that have no colliders, and then you can put down real colliders and stuff. And that lots of just any idea or any like intuition you have about optimizing worlds in Unity kind of translates over to Rec Room in a lot of ways. About like, oh, if I put a lot of shapes here, then that's going to incur a lot of performance costs. Maybe I can get away with fewer shapes, or I can make them not collidable or something.
Keeping in mind that everything made in Rec Room must be able to run on a wide range of hardware, including Android devices, iPads, the first iteration of Quest. So that's sort of what they use to make that. But there's a lot of complexity.
Yep.
So this scene probably is pushing the limits.
Yeah, I'd say that this is probably pretty close to the maximum that you can fit in a room. Once you
And
start,
there is no way to optimize it in Unity, like, or some desktop app. Like, the only way is to do it in Rec Room.
correct. Yeah. Yep.
Well, the developers do all the optimizing of. The developers make a lot of assumptions about what you can and can't do, and there's a lot of under the hood optimizing that's happening. But
Yep.
the user just has to make wise choices about what effect they're going and what shapes they can use and what materials. But this is all 3D modeling stuff. The other side of things is with programming. I don't know. I didn't hear if you explained heat, which is
Yeah.
sort of
So
CPU cycles.
yeah, so if you want to actually do things, so the demonstrations that I was doing in the other room, those have a separate like system involved for like or a separate heuristic for determining its performance, and that is like heat. They call it heat, and every operation you do costs a little bit of heat. This language is very similar to like Blueprint in Unreal Engine, whereby and the networking side of things is also similar to Blueprint, whereby you're syncing things selectively. Not everybody is running the code at the same time. Instead, you're running it locally, and then anything you want synced, you get to choose your syncing things. There's some things that get automatically synced because Rec Room wants to have the base experience intuitive. So like if I move a shape, that's automatically synced. But I can like change like a text tool to show something different for you and me effectively. So
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So, for example, not yesterday, but a few days ago, we looked in VR chat and we looked at one of the worlds where we could observe a vector field and we could modify it in real time.
Yes.
So it's pretty straightforward to me to imagine how one can do it like in a proper programming language, like in Unity. And some tells me that it would be like really hard to do it in Rec Rooms.
That one would maybe be a bit of a challenge. So there's certain things that are easy to program, certain things that are hard. I think right now we don't have a lot of ways to, like visualize something in a cheap way. So, for instance, the vectors that I made are actually fairly complicated to build in Rec Room, but they were so essential that I put in the effort to build them so that I could have them, right? Having a whole vector field would be a little bit tedious to set up, and it probably wouldn't be as high fidelity as the one that you saw in VR chat. That's one of the things that I'm looking at in Neos, because Neos has a similar kind of building system in game where you can build stuff with just your tools in game. You don't have to go to Unity or anything. And you can similarly spawn things in at will and build things in real time. And they have a bit more like optimization there. The only issue is that it's a heavier application, and so like I can't expect a student to go into Neos because they would need a $3,000 gaming PC and a top of the line headset, because you can't go on it on Quest or on your iPad or anything. So Rec Room kind of is the best in class, I think, for cross-platform compatibility.
Accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, accessibility, but it's always a balance.
Yeah, I also wonder what are the limits on modification of the style. So as far as I understand, I cannot import a model in Rec Room.
Correct.
For example, I cannot bring like a model of an asteroid or a spacecraft. I have to build it here.
Yep. That is one of the limitations. Another limitation that I find, one of the things I really like about Neos, for instance, is that I can copy and paste like literal images from my desktop into Neos. So if somebody's having a problem if somebody's having an issue with a problem, I can literally paste it into the world. Now we have a picture of the problem in the world. We can work on it in 3D space instead of 2D or over the stream, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing I wish we could do in Rec Room, being able to drag in content from outside. That is probably not going to happen. They are very protective of the look and feel of Rec Room.
A tiny bit, yeah.
Yeah, you can do the streamer.
The 2D screen.
Yeah.
Well, the video screen. You can share your desktop, but that's.
And I have used that in the past. You can share your desktop, but it's not like super high resolution, and like it's also slow. It runs at 1 FPS, so you're not going to be sharing videos or anything through it, and so on and so forth. But yeah.
Great. Yeah, but I mean, the great benefit for education is that it's friendly, essentially, in contrast to VR chat that is actually.
Yeah, it's like if I ask you to get
friendly.
into, if I ask a student to go into VR chat, I would be very nervous about where they might end up, like within their first few minutes of joining. They'll get through the tutorial, go into a portal, and then, end up in a public world or a public instance, and that's not a great thing. So.
Great, but in Rec Room also you you immediately open to this public environment.
Correct. Yeah. Well, no, not quite. So you do spawn into the dorm, and this has been my experience with the third grader that has the quest. Their first lesson, I actually joined them in their dorm, and we went over some of the ground rules about VR and like this application, and how we were just going to use it as kind of whenever you spawn in, you can go through this door, and I like created a new door for them to get into my tutoring room, right? And then that just sort of streamlined the whole experience for them. And now Rec Room to them right now is they spawn into their dorm, and they go to the lesson room where I'll be waiting for them, right? So they never get to see they never see the rec center. They never see any of the other rooms. And that's kind of my way of keeping them out of trouble and keeping trouble away from them is more accurate. They're a very sweet kid.
And do you have any experience to have like many kids at the same time?
I have not, actually. I mean, like a little bit. Okay, so I do participate in a build team here, and oftentimes we'll be building something or programming something, and then I'll have to explain some math concept to them, like cross products or dot products or something. And so in those instances, for very short periods of time, maybe like 30 minutes, I will have an impromptu lesson about how to calculate a cross product or a dot product using a whiteboard, using my vectors and stuff, right? And in those instances, yes, there are maybe 4 or 5 different people kind of watching. But those are also all very close acquaintances.
For the dynamics of kids in this kind of environment.
Yeah.
And they still keep the attention on the teacher, or it's just like too much things around?
I do not know. Me personally, I teach like one-to-one exclusively, just because I feel like that's where I can provide the most benefit.
Of course.
I do know that there are classes that you can take to learn the building tools of Rec Room. I've been meaning to actually do one on linear algebra because linear algebra is such a huge component of programming in this game. So, and a lot of people have asked me for like little private lessons. So I've been considering doing a linear algebra one. I just don't know if I want to do it for free. Is like this just like one of those things, you know. I want to get a little bit of compensation.
Good. Amazing. Yeah, so I think it gave a good idea of what are the limits and like what is the style of Rec Room, because looks definitely different from VR chat, just visually.
Yeah, their protection. So the textures and the colors, they're very strict about what they allow you to use. So for instance, all these textures are pre-selected, so none of these are imported. The colors, I think we get like 36 different colors to choose from, and like I think 24 materials. People do amazing things with it. Don't get me wrong, but that's another limitation. I
It
don't
has
think.
an art style. Like
Yeah.
there's an art team in charge that decides that they try very hard to have a Rec Room look like Rec Room.
Yep.
So that's why it has its distinctive look, which is an accomplishment.
Yep.
Great. Yeah. So there are certain limitations, but still, I mean, like it feels much more comfortable here compared to VR chat, because VR chat is all over the place.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then the question, the workshop we are having right now is that, like, how it can be adapted for like science communication shows, because in VR chat, what we saw, people are utilize this ability of taking like real models of planets, of spacecrafts, of whatever things we have, of microscopes, and just importing them directly in the world.
Yep.
And then like increasing in size, decreasing in size. Here we are fixed to these proportions.
Right.
Yeah, we cannot grow in size by factor of 2.
Yeah.
And VR chat is flexible enough to do that. And that's why I think it was more straightforward to create like a virtual observatory in VR chat.
Right.
With that you can find online and import and do something yourself. Here you're forced to be a 3D artist yourself, like from ground up.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually one of the huge appeals to Neos. Neos allows you to do that without even opening Unity. You can actually click and drag 3D models into the scene in real time. You don't have to like go through Unity, import a world. No, you spawn in, you can click and drag a 3D model, it'll spawn in front of me, and then everybody can see it. The only reason, really the only
from
reason.
your desktop?
Yeah, from your desktop. The only
I didn't know
reason
that. That's wonderful.
I haven't switched to Neos is because they don't have a good whiteboard yet. They don't have a way for me to really nicely. They don't have a good like whiteboard or something to like draw on.
Whiteboard, I see.
Yeah.
They also don't support Quester, like you said.
Yeah, and they don't. Yeah, and they don't support Quest and such. But for like my physics students, I've already started like doing some demonstrations in Neos of like, hey, like here's something that I can do in Neos that I couldn't do in Rec Room. So I'm here in Neos today to show you, you know, this kind of feature or something like that. So
yeah, so you try to use some WebXR platforms like Mozilla Hubs?
I looked at Mozilla Hubs and like I like really appreciated how you could like bring in Sketchfab models in real time and stuff. That I thought that was really cool. I haven't like looked at using it as a teaching platform just because I'm much more comfortable right now with the tools in Rec Room and Neos and VR Chat. So I mean that is like a potential for sure. I think I hadn't quite seen how. Do they have like a way for you to just like write in game?
Yes, they have a blackboard. You can import models from your computer. You can share screen. Like they have the biggest limitation there is that it's web browser rendering everything for you.
Yep.
So everything with Lightning is just a nightmare, and the limitation on the complexity of the scene is also like very, very strict.
Yep.
So that's a problem. And if you want to modify something, if you want to create like a vector so that you can scale with your hands, you can do that, but you need to program in JavaScript itself.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's not too scary, but like it is a very different than just like programming directly in game with like this node-based language that they have. So,
Great. Yep, thanks a lot. I think actually I wasn't looking into chat much, but I don't see any questions.
Yeah, if anybody in chat has any questions, feel free to ask.
Perfect. Yes, thanks a lot for this tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really highlights how it can be used for tutoring and teaching like right now without waiting 5 years.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
when it will
And
be
the benefits
more
are
widespread.
definitely like very apparent. Like I've there's a reason why I have as many students as I do right now. It's the appeal gets them in, and then they're like, "Oh my god, this is like way better than I've ever experienced with other tutors before." And so it's like lots of I'm getting a lot of like affirmations about the possibilities here and how powerful it is.
But why cannot it be scaled? Like $300 for a quest, it's quite a lot, but it's like comparable with a video game console.
Yep. Yep.
So why do you think people do not buy quests for tutoring?
So I've had a few students that have gotten a quest just for tutoring. I think I haven't quite sold all of my students on it yet. I've brought it up like, hey, like, come on in. And I think the general sentiment is that what they're getting through the stream is like good enough. Even though I try to pitch them like, hey, like, come on in. Like, if you were here, you could pull out the maker pen and draw out the magnetic field lines, you know, stuff like that. So it's a sales pitch a bit, but
yeah, it's fun. I think that the generation that right now is at school, they grew up like in the world where you have Twitch and YouTube with video game streamers. So for them, looking at someone playing video game is it's a normal thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't had with the students that I've streamed to, I haven't had any problems with like wondering if they're focused or wondering if they're paying attention. They are often pretty engaged, and yeah.
Great, interesting. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for everyone who watched it live and who will watch it later.
Yep.
Great. We will have probably another one in WebXR, just to show like what's there. We can have one in Neos. Frankly, I have zero experience with Neos, so
yeah, and so it's a little bit. That one's a little bit of a learning curve. That one might be a. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So also there is Altspace and this sort of platforms that are very, very rigid.
Yep.
Yeah, if they will be interested in them, we can also do a tour in them, but they're pretty straightforward.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you a lot for your time.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, and I'll get you that video. So.
Oh, you can do that here.
Yeah. You got high fives. You can shake hands. But like.
Oh.
Let's see. It's grab with your trigger. There we go.
I see.
Yeah, now we're friends.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. All right. I will
Yeah,
see you
thank
around. I'll send you that video as soon
See
as I
you.
get it uploaded.
Okay, bye.
Bye.